Hi, Mike, right here. It's Tuesday, time for the weekly workshop. And I know I'm a little bit late getting started. I had some things going on which relate to the topic today. And so I will explain to you why I'm late and use that to lead into what we want to talk about today. Excuse me. I was visiting with a church that I'm doing some work with regarding a variety of their bookkeeping needs and also, more importantly, their operational needs and their taxes, of course. All of these things are sort of the background for what we want to talk about today. And it took a little bit longer to meet with the group than I thought, and so I was late getting here, and I'm just a little discombobulated because of the change in access, position, whatever you want to say. But here we are now to get started. Why is this important? Well, because the topic I wanted to bring up today was not-for-profit organizations. You may be part of one. You may know about them. You may have some vague recollection of what's going on with not-for-profits, but it's really a very interesting field. And the reason I want to talk about it in a program that focuses on small businesses is this. I could not tell you how many times I've been approached by someone who has said that they would like to start a not-for-profit so that they could help clients of theirs afford to pay for their services. Now, in all honesty, these are people who are doing businesses that provide a valuable service, therapists, programs for improving life, for consulting, all kinds of things that people understand that there is a need for those with lower incomes to have some assistance in order to buy their services. The thing is, that's not what not-for-profit status is for. And that's the most difficult thing to explain to people. So let's talk about not-for-profit in general. I've told you before that the tax code begins with the phrase, all income is taxed from whatever source derived. That means that all income is taxed. And if you set up an operation and then you receive money for that operation, that's income and it should be taxed. Now, the rest of the tax code that I'm referring to is all of the exceptions and the things that are set up in order to change that simple sentence to the complicated tax code that we have in this country. Well, as things went along, it came to people's attention that there were activities that were considered for the public good, if you will. Charities, the kinds of organizations that help other people without attempting to make a profit. Churches. I probably should have done a little research and found out if perhaps churches or houses of religion weren't the first not-for-profit organizations. But that beside the point. There is a category in the tax code, it's section 501, and it deals with the various kinds of organizations that don't pay income tax. We call them roughly not-for-profit organizations, but that's not always true. Think about the fact that if a not-for-profit organization didn't make a profit, in other words, if they didn't bring in more money than they spent, they would have no money to do whatever it is that they hope to support and benefit. And therein lies the catch. In order for an organization to receive its not-for-profit status, it has to be able to demonstrate that its purpose for existence benefits a broader good than just the owner of the organization. In fact, the way the code has been written and has come along over time, the owner of the organization can't even sit on their own board. They can be a witness, they can attend the board meetings, an observer, I'm sorry, not witness, they can be an observer at board meetings, they can even chime in, but they have no authority to vote one way or the other on matters before the board. And did I mention that every not-for-profit organization has to have a board? There has to be some group of people who can work together in order to see to it that the things that the organization is directed to do meets the criteria of the charitable purpose that the organization was put together for. Now, there are some other non-charitable not-for-profits, things like sporting teams, amateur sporting teams, booster clubs for amateur sporting teams. I'm sorry, not the sporting teams themselves, but the booster clubs for the sporting teams. What are they called? I'm trying to think of them. There are various kinds of charities that, obviously churches, but there are groups that come together in order to focus on a particular need and fulfill that need. Think things like the Red Cross or things like the various associations that work with diseases like the Cancer Society and Easter Seals, different groups like that. Each one of those organizations has a different purpose that they want their money to be used for so that the purpose is supported and accomplishes the things that they state they want to do. I've worked with a couple of booster clubs, and they are of particular interest because oftentimes the booster club is connected with a specific organization, like perhaps a gym or a coach of a sport. Gymnastics is one that I have the most connection with. And while the owner of the organization is aware that the booster club is there, the owner of the organization cannot receive money from the booster club in order for it to maintain its not-for-profit status. The booster club has to be able to show that none of the money that they pay out goes for anything other than things that benefit the sport in general. Well, how do you benefit a sport in general? Well, that usually comes down to such things as paying the referees or umpires or whatever the officials are that have to be paid in order to provide that third-party sanction for an event, or the money that has to be paid for the team to travel to the event. These things all promote the sport because you're not paying the owner of the gym or the individual coach that is working with the team directly out of booster club funds. Now, don't get me wrong, because the booster club is underwriting these costs for away events and for the events that the team members participate in, it does free up money that the owner of the business doesn't have to pay. And then thereby, I guess you could say it increases his or her profits. But by keeping that very clear distinction between who receives the money, it's possible to maintain your not-for-profit status. So if you're a therapist who thinks people should be able to contribute money in a tax-exempt way, and then simply turn around and pay for the services of that therapist, you're mistaken, because that doesn't work. Now, which isn't to say there are not grant making organizations that are not for profits that could do that kind of thing, but that's a different thing than most people think about setting up. It's a complex situation and one that requires some thought, but the first go-to position that people take is that I can get people to contribute money, they can write it off their taxes, and people will pay me that wouldn't be able to pay me otherwise because of the support this not-for-profit organization has. I worked with a couple guys that really walked a very fine line on this, because what they were doing was helping people finance their kids' college education through a variety of means. They had a not-for-profit organization whose purported purpose, and I shouldn't say purported, it was the purpose of the organization, was to educate people on how to do just that, to help them understand how to file the reports, how to file the applications for the scholarships, to file the applications for the grants, to file the applications for loans, to help people be able to do that. And they charged money for this service. But in all honesty, their real purpose was to be able to demonstrate that the securities that they sold, the 529 plans that they sold, the other kinds of investment vehicles that they sold, fit into this planning system very well. Again, while they did not themselves take salaries for the operation of this organization, the costs that they charged people to pay for this were reasonable, and certainly probably in keeping with the actual costs of doing the meetings and doing the publications and doing the different things that they did. But the money that they actually made was on bringing people into this organization and being able, through that, to demonstrate how good the product was they had to sell. Like I said, it's a very fine line, and I haven't talked with them recently to know if they've had any trouble or not. But this is something that you can certainly do. It certainly can be utilized as part of a business model. But like everything in which you're trying to do something out of the ordinary, you have to be sure that all of your P's and Q's are carefully placed, your I's dotted, your T's crossed, in order to keep them getting in trouble with the IRS. Not to mention the potential of getting in trouble with the state taxing authority, because while states in general don't require you to be a not-for-profit with a federal designation, if you claim to be a not-for-profit, the tax return that you file needs to demonstrate the same kinds of information. It's just that there's no pre-formatted application and approval of your status as a not-for-profit. I'm getting off track here. What I'm saying is that it's something that is worth looking into, and it certainly is something that can make life better for the rest of us. Let's face it, we all know someone or know of someone or have ourselves been benefited by some of these organizations, whether it's the Red Cross during a disaster, whether it's a group from the United Way in our local community, whether it's things from our church. There are just a variety of ways in which not-for-profit organizations make our society a little bit better place to live. There's an argument that says that not-for-profits should take the place of, or are a better alternative than the government for providing social backup services. That's a debatable issue, and it certainly should be debated. But the reason I bring it up is that, interestingly enough, government agencies are not-for-profits. And have a separate designation. You can also have not-for-profits that are not eligible to receive tax-deductible donations. And these are not-for-profits like political parties, business associations, chambers of commerce and different associations like that. And there's even the fact that you can have small business associations, unincorporated entities that, provided the funds that they handle, both in and out, are below a certain level, don't even need to file a tax return, don't even need to apply for not-for-profit status. They simply continue to exist and create no difficulty. The dollar amount for those kinds of things is right at $2,500 unless it's changed recently. So if you have an organization that brings in less than $2,500 in a year and does not hold, I believe the threshold for holding money, I want to say 10,000, but I could be overstating the case. The fact is that you can't just go and collect $2,500 a year for 4 years and then run off with the money. No, if questioned, you need to be able to show that you have things going on. I'm the treasurer for a business group. We have maybe 10 members. We pay $80 a year, so that's $800 that comes in. And is that right? Yeah, that's about right. And we distribute that money through various things that we do, either from the annual breakfast that we have or from paying money to charitable groups that pay attention to us. 80 times 10, 80 times 14. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry, I traditionally have a problem with decimals, and I was afraid I'd slipped a decimal there, but no, it's 10 members at $80 a piece, $80 a year, so that's $800. So that should give you some idea of the basics of not-for-profits. However, from my standpoint, there's a lot to keep in mind there. And you may be aware of things that are going on in not-for-profits because of perhaps your church. You could be a church treasurer. You could have some understanding of the Dad's Club that helps support the high school athletics in your community. All of these different kinds of things are not-for-profits, and they need to be respected for what they are. They are intended to make life better for everybody, not just to provide income to the owners of the business. Now, that isn't to say that the board may not elect an executive director, that there might not even be other staff in the not-for-profit, depending upon how large it is. And those staff may well be paid a salary. They may be paid a good salary. One of the biggest not-for-profits that we all know about is called Goodwill Industries. And it's a multi-million-dollar organization. And by multi-million dollars, I mean the value of the donations they receive, both in stuff and in money, is sizable. And the money that they receive from selling the stuff that they get is also sizable. So it can be a complex organization. But since Goodwill Industries has as its purpose to provide employment training and support for such groups as pregnant mothers and other kinds of social not obligations, but social enhancements that they help pay for, they're considered a not-for-profit. Well, oftentimes I've heard people complain that the president of Goodwill Industries receives a six-figure salary, and therefore somehow that makes Goodwill Industries less worthy of people's contributions. They forget that an organization of that size has the same or operational and business obligations as any business of that size. And you don't want a guy making $5,000 a year operating a multi-million-dollar business. He doesn't have the it's just not a valid compensation for that kind of activity. And so that's one of the other things that you have to keep in mind when you're thinking about not-for-profits. And it comes back to my original statement. You have to have a profit in order to do what it is you want to do. Goodwill Industries has to make more money on what they sell than it costs them to acquire the things that they sell. Even if it's a strictly donation company, there has to be more money coming in than there is going out in order to be able to do the things that you want to do. Let's talk about one of the dads clubs. The purpose of the dads clubs in most cases is to provide support for the athletic organizations in our high schools. Now, we all know that we keep our tax bills a little bit lower on the local level by relying upon things like ticket sales and the support of dads clubs to pay for some of the costs of high school athletics. So it's a reasonable thing. So most of the dads clubs I'm aware of, they generally run the concession stands at this high school's stadium. And so they sell hot dogs and popcorn and potato chips and soft drinks. And they operate a small walk-up restaurant that operates at each game. And if the school is laid out like many of them are, the stadium may be adjacent to the track and field facilities. It may be adjacent to other things. They may even have a portable trailer that they use to go to away games, although that wouldn't be fair to the team that they're going away to. My point is that all of these things bring in money for the school. And after the costs of the propane for the grills, the hot dogs for the sandwiches, the bags of chips from the distributor, the electricity for the storefront, the little booth they sell the candy and popcorn from, all of those things have to be paid first, and whatever's left over then is paid to the school as their support for the athletic activities. That's the purpose of the dance club. If they did not make that money, there'd be no reason for them to exist. The volunteer work that the dads do would amount to nothing. So every not-for-profit is in fact a business, or at least if they're going to be successful, they have to operate like a business. And in so doing, the kinds of concerns that the operators of the not-for-profit have are exactly the same that any business manager has. Things like maintaining control over expenses, like enhancing the amount of income, like personnel issues, like issues of venues, marketing. How do we get our word out? How do we get people to help support us? And of course, the clerical work that's involved in the requirement to send out receipts for every donation, to calculate and put together the income from every time you sell the hot dogs. All of these things have to be kept track of and determined whether or not the organization is in fact worthwhile to keep going. Is it in fact fulfilling its purpose? So it's difficult sometimes to think about the complexities of not-for-profits. And when small business owners run off immediately and say, oh, I want to start a not-for-profit to help people that can't afford my services to afford my services, that just won't happen. One other thing I'll mention, if you're thinking about or have thought about doing what I'm talking about, as I said, you have to have a board. And that board has to be of a certain size. I shouldn't say a certain size. You need to have more than one person on the board. And the board needs to consist of at least some disinterested parties. In other words, the person that founded the organization, the person that perhaps is the executive director, might in fact be involved in the actual activities of the not-for-profit, but you also need some people who can observe from the outside so that they can make comments and suggestions to be sure that good business practices are in fact being observed, and that we aren't just raking money off the top and pocketing it and thereby defrauding the public who thinks that they're supporting an actual not-for-profit organization. I will say that since a lot of not-for-profit organizations function based upon money that they receive not only from donations or from proprietary operations, but also from grants, that there is a rich community of interest that provides work for specialized consultants and coaches in dealing with not-for-profit organizations. And I've known a couple in my time, people who will sit and talk with the board of a not-for-profit and help them tweak and modify what they need to do in order to more effectively raise money for whatever the purpose is that they're trying to achieve. So I know we've only talked a few minutes here, but I wanted to share that information about not-for-profits because I think it's been an important, or it is an important topic, and it comes up so often. And the reason it seems so appropriate now is that next Monday is the standard day, the standard tax deadline for not-for-profit organizations to file their tax returns. So if you have a not-for-profit and it's time to file the tax return, let me warn you that you can get a 6-month extension, just like any other tax return, and have some more time. Or if your not-for-profit is operating on a fiscal year, then that date is dependent upon the normal fiscal year rules, which in general are 4 months after the end of the fiscal year, the 15th of the 4th month after the end of the fiscal year, as your standard filing date. So just be aware and be interested in doing that. I want to shift gears now just a little bit, and I'll be sending this out once I get it formatted, and I'm going to try and get it out this afternoon to let people have access to it, which is another reason I'm trying to keep it short. But I want to take a couple more minutes to let you know that we will be doing office hours this afternoon at 5 o'clock, right here on this same link, mcw.bz/weekly. And I will be available for anybody that shows up, and I will answer questions. I will monitor discussion. I will do whatever needs to be done based upon what you bring to me. So if you have a question about your business, if you have something that you would like to know something about, this is your opportunity to talk to me and get some answers. And until for the next month, we'll be doing these at no additional charge. If you just come on board, you'll find out what's going on, and hopefully that will generate more interest in this program that I'm doing, this weekly workshop system that allows you to learn and grow and ask and improve the quality of your business support. You're working on your business, not in your business. Something that frequently gets left by the wayside, not necessarily because you don't have the desire to do it, but because you don't just seem to have the resources that you need in order to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Well, here's a perfect resource. You get me, you get discussions, some of them rather short and abbreviated like today, some of them longer, more complicated, but in every case, it's intended to teach you something that has to do with your business, something that can apply to your business. With the system, the weekly workshop system, then you have the 2 monthly office hours sessions, the second Tuesday of the month at 5 o'clock, and the fourth Friday of the month at 10 a.m. And we'll do that both of those times. In addition, you get access to the archive of all the weekly workshops. And then coming soon, we will also have access to a social networking chat room that will allow you to ask questions of the group at any time and get your answers at any time. This program right now costs $70 a month, and it's a perfect opportunity. But for the next month, it's being offered free, gratis to anyone that wants to sign in to see what they think, also to get some feedback from me. But after that time, we'll go to the usual situation where the weekly workshops are published free for a week until the next one comes out. But all of the other features, the office hours and the social media, are only available to subscribers who also get unlimited access to the full library of all weekly workshops in the past. So think about that. Join me if you have the time today. It's 5 p.m. Eastern Time, mcw.bz/weekly. And I hope to see you there.